Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to give it just a few seconds for folks to trickle in, and then we'll get started. All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Natalia Abrams. I'm with Student Debt Crisis Center. Thank you for spending your afternoon or early evening with us to learn about the student loan repayment system. This is what we call our general workshop. So we're going to do kind of a high level of as much as you need to know right now to help you with your student loan debt. Uh, and sorry about that. Okay, there we go. As I mentioned, I'm Natalia with Student Debt Crisis Center. Student Debt Crisis Center, we are a national advocacy organization with 2 million supporters calling for fundamental reforms to student loan policies and an end to the student debt crisis once and for all. We want to go over some quick reminders. So please use the Q&A function. We have a lot of folks that join our workshops, and that's the only way we're able to answer your questions. You can use the anonymous function if you do not want to have your name show up in the Q&A box. We will do our best to answer as many questions as possible. We have a great team here from Student Debt Crisis Center and Protect Borrowers to try to get to your questions. Any information shared on today's clinic pertains to the current guidelines and rules as of today. Today is February 19th, 2026. And we say this because there's always been new rules, new changes. So we want to make sure if you're viewing this months down the line that you check the newest regulations or changes to your student loans. In addition, a recording will be provided to anyone who registered and is attending this webinar. So if we're kind of going fast, like I said, there's a lot to cover. You can watch this in your own time. You'll get that recording about 24 hours after this workshop. Lastly, we are not financial counselors nor attorneys. However, we are advocates and experts, and we're here to help you to the best of our ability. So today we're going to cover federal student updates, including what's going on with the SAVE program, public service loan forgiveness, and default. There's been updates in all of those categories. How do I know what type of loan I have, which is really important when you're looking at repayment programs. We're going to go over that. We'll talk about repayment plan options that are available currently for borrowers, what to do if you're behind on your payments, and what are the loan forgiveness options beyond public service loan forgiveness. And with that, I'm going to pass it to our great colleague and friend, Aisa Canchola Banez. Apologies for not getting that correctly. Aisa, we're so honored to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Natalia and Team SDCC. It is such a great honor to join y'all today for this clinic. And thank you to all of y'all who are joining us this evening and just trying to get the information that you need to equip yourself and to ultimately protect yourself, amidst this ever-changing climate on all things student loans. As Natalia had mentioned, things seem to be changing each and every day. So it is very important that, y'all take advantage of opportunities like this. So thank you for taking time out of your day to do so. So as Natalia mentioned, my name is Aisa Canchola Banez. I'm the policy director for Protect Borrowers. We are a national nonprofit advocacy, policy, litigation organization. We're formally known as the Student Borrower Protection Center. And within our new name, we are a team of advocates working to address the growing kind of crisis of debt across Americans' lives. We started specifically focused on student loan debt and now do work on the rising credit card debt issue, the growing utility debt crisis across this country, medical debt, and more. And so we do what we need to do to investigate financial abuses, push for policy change that ultimately alleviates the burden that this debt has had on American families. Next slide, please. So to Natalia's point earlier, today we're going to be discussing federal updates, which there is certainly no shortage of them. So first and foremost, we wanted to talk about, some of the most recent updates within the landscape related to student loan default. Last year we had heard, or right before the end of the year, the Trump administration had announced that it was going to um, uh, uh, begin its forced collections system. And so this is the system that the federal government has the tools at the federal government's disposal to collect on defaulted student loans. Those include offsetting an entire tax refund. That also includes garnishing a percentage of a borrower's Social Security benefits, and even garnishing and taking directly wages directly from a borrower's paycheck. As a result of, I know many of our organizations, including SDCC, were really working to mobilize borrowers to apply pressure on this administration to change course on this decision. And last month, in January, we did see an announcement from the administration that they were going to temporarily halt its plans to renew wage garnishment specifically, as well as tax refund seizures. That is a huge relief, I know, for millions of borrowers who are currently in default. As of right now, there are 9 million people who are in default and who would have been at risk of being subjected to the government's forced collections system. Just in the last year alone, under the first year of the Trump administration, 3.6 million borrowers fell into default. And that has largely been due to all of the various changes and disruptions within the student loan system. It is also in response to the growing affordability crisis that we know is pushing folks further behind on their student loans and making it harder for them to keep up with rent and other types of essential everyday essentials that are just growing in prices. So as of right now, the federal government is no longer planning to resume wage garnishment or tax refund seizures. There are things that folks should consider if they are in default and are worried that they could see their taxes seized or their wages garnished. So as of right now, there is the potential to potentially call or go to the default resolution group just to ensure that you are not potentially at risk for tax refund seizure. We know that the system has been broken for some time, and so even if the administration's plans currently are not to resume these types of actions, we know that there are things that borrowers should do to protect themselves. So we can put some of those links in the chat coming up. So that's all things default. We have also been keeping track of the PSLF program. Folks might remember that last year, the Trump administration proposed rules to significantly change what types of organizations could be eligible for public service loan forgiveness. They put originally it was a Trump executive order that eventually became a proposed rule out of the Department of Education. And we see it as rules that could really target nonprofit organizations and those working for cities and states who do not abide by this administration's agenda. And so, organizations that work with immigrant communities, organizations that provide gender affirming care to minors, organizations that help or engage in peaceful protest and demonstrations, et cetera. Those are a couple of the examples of organizations that would have been that would be kind of blocked from accessing PSLF under this rule. So that rule was formally kind of unveiled and was quickly challenged in court. There were multiple lawsuits. And so as of right now, those lawsuits are kind of going through the process. But it's important to note that that rule is not in effect. The rule was scheduled to begin to be implemented beginning July 1 of this year. However, with the lawsuits actively in court, that we expect that to delay the implementation of this rule even further. But so the thing to keep in mind is if you are currently trying to earn public service loan forgiveness, nothing within this proposed rule affects your ability to keep making progress towards PSLF forgiveness. And so you should continue to keep track of your payments. And if you are able to do so, continue to stay on track with your loans because nothing within the program has changed as of yet. And then the last piece here is that unfortunately, due to the mass layoffs across the federal government and specifically at the Department of Education, the department is staffed at half of its capacity currently, and that is having a particularly harmful impact on borrowers. We are seeing massive backlogs of IDR applications still to this day. As of earlier this month, there was a backlog of over 600,000 IDR applications. These are from folks who are waiting to access affordable repayment plans and are also seeing significant delays from, to get responses from their complaints to the ombudsman's office. And so if that is a process that you are actively trying to work through right now and are not getting any kind of responses back from the department or your servicer, we do encourage folks to contact their members of Congress and submit casework request assistance to have your member of Congress weigh in on your behalf at the Department of Education just to get you some answers and to get you some progress on that front. Next slide, please. In addition to those kind of big policy changes at the Department of Education, Congress passed its One Big Beautiful Bill legislation last summer and now the Department of Education has begun its very hefty implementation work. So what we have seen is now 2 different sessions of negotiated rulemaking. This is the regulatory process that the Department of Education uses to make new rules that essentially implement these new laws. They bring a various group of stakeholders together and talk through what the rules are, and then they publish proposed rules that the public can then engage in and respond to. Actually, right now, we are in the process of a public comment period for one of the first really big kind of tranches of rules that the department has put out. This was known as the RISE negotiated rulemaking process. And this one committee is really responsible for, or was responsible for all of the rules related to the big changes with regards to student loans. So as a reminder, the One Big Beautiful Bill eliminated an entire loan program known as the Graduate Plus Loan Program for future borrowers, and it imposed new lending limits on how much students and parents could take on when pursuing and trying to pay for college. It also significantly phases out current repayment options after July 1, 2028, and then creates only 2 new programs, new repayment options for student loan borrowers after July 1, 2026. And those are known as the Repayment Assistance Plan, as well as a new tiered standard plan. So as of right now, we are in a process, a public comment period. Last month, the department published its rules. And now the public has the opportunity to weigh in and kind of encourage the department to do what it can to ensure that while they're implementing all of these new rules and implementing this new law, that current borrowers are not pushed further into debt, that they are, that borrowers who are forced to wait in all of the delays that we had mentioned before are not made worse off because the department is half-staffed and is trying to implement these unprecedented changes to the student loan system. So the deadline for that public comment is March 2nd. And I know that our partners at Student Debt Crisis Center have put together an incredible kind of action tool that you could use to engage in this process, and also gives some really good helpful templates and language that you can use to have your voice heard in this process. So the deadline for that is March 2nd, so it's coming up. And we expect so that it can hit the implementation deadline of July 1, 2026. As we mentioned, there's a lot of, the department's operated at half of its capacity. That could slip, but they are working towards a very aggressive regulatory timeline here. And that timeline is essentially required under the new law. Next slide, please. And so on top of all of those updates, we have been also seeing some developments on the SAVE plan front. Folks will remember the SAVE plan was the more recent plan that was established under the Biden administration, that was essentially the most affordable for most borrowers, the most affordable plan available to date, and allowed people to get towards cancellation much sooner and see much more affordable monthly bills. The plan had been stuck in litigation as a result of several different partisan lawsuits that were filed. And as a result, 8 million borrowers had been in this kind of SAVE forbearance. So they were not required to make payments. And at the time, of when the SAVE forbearance had begun, it was a zero interest bearing forbearance at the time. Unfortunately, back in August, under the Trump administration, the Secretary of Education announced that people who were in this forbearance were going to begin accruing interest. And so after August 1st, if you are enrolled in the SAVE forbearance, while you are not required to make payments, interest accrual has since begun. And so if that is something that you are currently enrolled in and you are looking to get off of that plan and can do so and can afford to do so, please do look into whether or not please look into alternatives so that you can get back into making progress on your loans on one of the other plans. Earlier I think it was last month actually, the Department of Education announced that it entered into a settlement with the Republican attorneys general that were challenging the SAVE plan. And so what this settlement essentially stipulates is that the department is no longer going to enroll people into the SAVE plan and is officially going to start the formal wind down process of the SAVE plan. So over the last year, or over a year, the last couple of years, the SAVE plan had just been paused as litigation had started. Now, Secretary McMahon has agreed to start the wind down process. What they have done is all pending applications that borrowers had in the queue that were trying to apply for SAVE are being essentially mass denied. Borrowers are not allowed to submit new applications for the SAVE plan. And then as of right now, we are still waiting from the department to get a sense of what the timeline will be for the remaining. I think there's now a little over 7 million people who are enrolled in SAVE, what the timeline will be for them to get off of the plan. Things that we are kind of trying to think of is, whether borrowers will be automatically put into another IDR plan, or whether or not the department is going to put people back onto the standard plan and force them to have to reapply for an IDR plan. So we're waiting for some more certainty out of the department. And so I'm certain that SDCC will make sure to keep you guys updated once we get more of that clarity. So the changes to the SAVE plan. So we have been getting certainly lots of questions on how this new settlement interacts with what was included in the One Big Beautiful Bill. So folks will remember the One Big Beautiful Bill would have phased out all of the current IDR plans, including SAVE, after July 1, 2028 for current borrowers. So borrowers who are already in repayment and folks who do not take on a new loan after July 1, 2026. This settlement essentially puts the department on a fast track to wind down the SAVE plan 2 years earlier than required under the law. And so now SAVE will be phased out much sooner, and the timeline for the next steps is still unclear. But once we get that information, we will definitely be making sure to share that for folks, because I know it affects a lot of people. And so with all of these changes, unfortunately, with all of these changes and a vacuum of information from the department, we know that is an environment that really allows misinformation and scams to proliferate. And so we are just really cautioning folks to be careful with misinformation. We are hearing from borrowers and seeing social media and Reddit forums that servicers are recommending folks to consolidate their loans in order to get out of the SAFE plan. That is incorrect. And that is false information. And so folks should definitely, so not only is it misinformation, but it is incredibly terrible advice, especially since, if you consolidate your loans, it could reset your payment history and your credit count altogether. And so we are encouraging folks to not follow that misinformation. And there are really helpful resources that you can lean on in the absence of good guidance from the Department of Education, unfortunately, and servicers at this time. So what you should do, I know SDCC talks about, and we'll go through kind of the varying repayment loan options that borrowers could qualify for. There are loans there are resources like the loan simulator on FSA's website that folks could take advantage of that allow you to understand what the differences are with the various student loan repayment options and what your payment could look like based on your income and family size. Our partners at EdCap also have tools that help you estimate your monthly payment and vary under the varying repayment plans. And then it's important that, with student loan advice, it's very hard to follow, a one size fits all piece of advice here because so much of it relates to the very unique circumstances of a borrower, of their family, and their finances. And so, if you are a borrower that is still enrolled in SAVE, it is entirely up to you and your financial circumstances as to whether or not you want to remain in that plan. But it is important to remember interest is accruing and it has been accruing since August 1st of last year. The Department of Education has also said that the SAVE forbearance time, so every month that you've been spending in that SAVE forbearance does not count towards public service loan forgiveness credit, nor does it count towards the IDR cancellation credit. And so if those are things that you are really working towards, you may want to consider switching those plans. But those are all things that you should consider when making that decision.
Awesome. Thank you, Aisa. I will take it from here to go over student loan types and servicers, and then a little bit about income-driven repayment plans and some options for you all. So, if you've been on our workshops before, you've seen this probably a bajillion times, but this is a loan type chart that we've made for you all. And we are not going to address private loans tonight. We will only be focusing on federal student loans. And you can see that we have three main categories here. We have direct loans, Perkins loans, and FELP loans, or Federal Family Education Loan Program loans. So Perkins loans, we'll start there in the middle, are no longer given out. They were previously held by your institution. And FELP loans are also no longer given out. Those are commercially held or held by the Department of Education. And there are several different types of FELP loans, as you can see there. And then we also have direct loans, and those loans are newer. They're the ones that are being given out right now, and we can have several different types here, direct, subsidized, and unsubsidized. We have direct graduate plus, direct parent plus, and then direct consolidation loans. And we have direct graduate plus loans highlighted in red here, as Aisa mentioned earlier. They will no longer be issued starting July 1st, 2026. So this is a rundown of the different loans that you may have. And with a loan, you will have a servicer. We have listed out federal and private servicers or lenders here, just so you can kind of get a feel of maybe what type of loan you have just by thinking about it. Federal loan servicers are going to be Ed Financial, CRI, Nelnet, AES, Aidvantage, Mohila, Heartland, and then Sloan Servicing. And if you have a private loan, you'll have a company or a bigger bank who owns your loan. So it'll be something like Discover, Sally Mae, Navient, Wells Fargo, SoFi, Earnest, College Ave. Those are all common private loan lenders. And then, of course, we have Mohila on both sides to add a little confusion in there. So, in order to really understand if you have a federal or private loan, you will want to head to studentaid.gov. And I believe that is what we're going to go over next. So there is an updated dashboard to studentaid.gov, and we'll go over that in just a second. But when you're going to studentaid.gov, it's really important to type it into the browser directly. If you just do a quick Google search, you might end up on a website that's asking you for money or just trying to scam you in some way. And that, of course, would be really harmful. So make sure that you have it bookmarked or you're getting it from a trusted source, typing it directly in. If you do have trouble logging in or resetting your password, you can call 1-800-433-3243, or you can head to studentaid.gov/fsa-id/help/recover-account. And both of those options are good to get back into your account. Okay, so this is what the new dashboard looks like in this screenshot here. This is where you can find your loan balance, your interest rates, your current repayment plan, your recertification date, and you can dig more into this by hitting View My Loans. This was previously called the My Aid section on studentaid.gov, and now it's just called My Loans. It's directly on the page once you log in. You just scroll down a little bit and you'll see this little section. Once you hit View My Loans, you will come to a screen that breaks down every single loan that you have and your repayment progress, all that stuff. You can really dig in there. So, highly encourage you to visit that if you haven't in the past couple of months. Okay, student loan repayment options. So we have another chart for you. We have the standard plan, then we have alternative plans, and we have income-driven repayment plans. The standard plan is going to be what everyone goes into if you don't apply for anything when you enter repayment, or if you don't recertify your income on an income-driven repayment plan, you don't take action to keep your status there, you'll just be put back into the standard plan. Alternative plans and income-driven repayment plans both require an application. And then a note here, we'll go over this again, but the repayment assistance plan, or the RAP plan that's listed here under income-driven repayment plans, will become available on July 1st of this year, 2026. So it's not available yet. And then, of course, we have SAVE highlighted in red because no one can enroll in it or apply for it anymore. Okay, so we can get into the standard plan. So this is the 10-year standard plan. Again, as I said, borrowers are initially placed into this plan. It has fixed monthly payments with a repayment timeline of 10 years. Sometimes it is called the level plan. So if you're logging in to your servicer account and it says level, that means you're in the standard plan. It's available to folks with unconsolidated loans or consolidated loans with a low balance of less than $7,500. And of course, there are more affordable plans out there. We will go over those in just a minute. And there's no loan forgiveness aspect to the 10-year standard plan, so you will pay off your entire balance. This plan could be good for you if you want to really make a big dent in your debt, if you're worried about all of the interest ballooning and seeing that in your account, or if you just want to get out of the system a little bit more quickly. Okay, so then we also have the 10 to 30 year standard plan, and this is for consolidated loans. And you can see the debt amount and breakdown and the repayment period that goes along with each of those brackets. So this, again, your monthly payments are going to be calculated off of your loan balance. So that is why there are different time periods to pay off your loan. And with this repayment plan as well, there is no loan forgiveness aspect at the end, so you will pay the entire balance. Then we have those fixed alternative plans, and these plans are variations of the standard plan. So you'll see some similarities. Across all of these three plans, the loan eligibility is going to remain the same. So all loans are eligible for these plans except for Perkins loans. However, if you do have a Perkins loan, you can just consolidate that into a direct consolidation loan and it will become eligible for any of these three plans. So the extended plan, payments are going to be fixed here, and the repayment timeline is going to be 25 years. It's only available to folks with balances higher than $30,000. The graduated plan, the repayment timeline here is going to vary on the loan type that you have. So if you have a FFEL loan or a direct consolidation loan, it's going to be 10 to 30 years based on your loan balance, and all other loans are going to have a 10-year timeline. The payments on this plan are going to start lower and they'll increase every 2 years. And then on the extended graduated plan, it's a combination of those previous two. So the repayment timeline here is going to be 25 years. You'll have those kind of incremental payments where the payment goes up every 2 years. And then it's only available to folks with balances higher than $30,000. Again, for these three plans, as well as both types of the standard plan, for all of those, there is no forgiveness aspect to those plans. Does not mean that they're not helpful, but just keep that in mind. You will pay off the entire balance. Okay, income-driven repayment plans. So there are plenty of benefits for IDR plans or income-driven repayment plans. The monthly payments here are calculated as a percentage of your discretionary income. It's based on your income and family size, not the loan amount, and that's what makes it more affordable. And because they're more affordable than the standard plan or sometimes those alternative plans, that helps prevent default and delinquency. This type of plan, an IDR plan, is going to be most beneficial to folks with lower incomes, anyone who's unemployed, or if you have recently experienced a decrease in your income. And the important thing about an IDR plan is that you can recertify a lower income at any time to secure a year's worth of lower payments. So if you just recertified, it was processed, and then you experienced unemployment, maybe you can recertify your income and now get a lower monthly payment for the next year. We recommend recertifying your income every 11 months. You do need to do this technically every 12 months, but to avoid any really tight deadlines, we just recommend 11 months. And this is essentially sharing updated information with your servicer about your income and your family size. That way they can readjust your monthly payments for the next 12 months. For these IDR plans, you do have the option for loan forgiveness. I've seen already a few questions in the chat about that. And this is possible after payments are made for 20 or 25 years, depending on what type of plan you have, and we'll go over that in just a second. So 240 credits may be required if your plan has a 20-year timeline, and 300 credits may be required if your plan has a 25-year timeline. What we mean by credits is payments, qualifying payments. We use those interchangeably, so if you ever hear someone referring to credits or qualifying payments, those are the same. And your credits and repayment history do transfer over when you switch from one IDR plan to another. So if you are in the save forbearance right now and you're thinking about going to the pay plan, or I think someone in the chat maybe was thinking about going to the income-based repayment plan, all of your credits that you've earned so far, all of those qualifying payments that you've made will transfer to that new repayment plan. Your timeline, however, might be different. On this next slide, before we get into the timelines, We just want to make sure that everyone is on the same page about an IDR plan because it can get confusing. So, IDR, income driven repayment, is the umbrella term for the program, the overall program. IBR, or income based repayment, income contingent repayment, pay as you earn, or saving on a valuable education, are all types of IDR plans. So, they fall under that big, broader term of IDR. So we can see the breakdown of these plans on this slide. So you can see I was talking about how the monthly payments are based off of your discretionary income. You can see that each plan takes a different percentage of your discretionary income, and then also each plan has a little bit different of a timeline for repayment. So, depending on what you're eligible for, and depending on um, what estimated payments you're given, you could fall into a 20-year timeline or a 25-year timeline and have different monthly payment amounts. Two notes on this page. If we can go back one, thank you. Um, the pay plan, not everyone is going to be eligible for that. I did see some comment in the Q&A about that. There is an eligibility requirement that prohibits some people from being eligible for that. And then IBR, income-based repayment, is now available to folks who maybe didn't qualify previously due to hardship requirements. So if you haven't checked your eligibility in a while, maybe a couple of months, and you are maybe in the save plan or you're just looking for a different type of plan, I would definitely check out your options for these IDR plans. Okay, the repayment assistance plan, or RAP. Again, this is not implemented yet. It's slated to begin on July 1st of this year. The repayment term for RAP is going to be 30 years, so that's going to be 360 IDR credits. So it is going to be longer than the current IDR plans. Who qualifies for this plan? This is going to be eligible for all borrowers with direct loans except for Parent Plus loans. So if you have a Parent Plus loan, you won't be able to get into RAP. And then some things to note about the plan is that $0 payments will no longer exist. There will be a minimum of $10 a month for a payment, even if you're unemployed. The RAP plan will also waive any interest that's not covered by your monthly payment, and it will reduce your principal by up to $50 if the payment does not do so. And then also for how the monthly payments are calculated, instead of using the discretionary income, the RAP plan is going to be based on 1 to 10% of your adjusted gross income, or AGI. So this is, less generous than the SAVE plan and more expensive than other IDR plans for lower income folks. And you can use the EdCap tool that Aisa was looking or talking about earlier to kind of figure out how that would impact you. I believe RAP is uploaded into that tool. And then we do have this little chart up here. Again, you'll get a copy of this recording, so you can fast forward or rewind to this point and kind of look at how your income range would be impacted in this chart here. Okay, so changes to IDR plans. We've talked about a lot already tonight. The OBBBA outlined that the following IDR plans are set to phase out by July 1st, 2028 at the latest. So they could be phased out sooner, and this is going to impact income contingent repayment, or ICR, and the pay as you earn, or pay plans. So because of that, you should definitely explore your repayment options to prepare for this change. While we do have that July 1st date of 2028, seems far away. Things like Natalia said, things have been changing a lot lately, so it's better to just be prepared now. And then if borrowers are enrolled in pay or ICR, do not choose another repayment plan by the time that those plans are eliminated. And you have a direct loan, you'll be placed in the wrap plan. If you have a FFEL loan or any direct consolidation loan that repaid a Parent Plus loan, you'll be placed in the income-based repayment plan. So applying for an IDR plan, you can do this online at studentaid.gov. Um, you can either do an online version or find the PDF paper version there. So you can do either or. If you did apply before March 2025 and submitted an application requesting the lowest monthly payment option or applied for SAVE and your application is still pending, you might want to consider resubmitting your application due to those backlogs. Unfortunately, we have seen that folks can't find their applications anymore. So if you have a application that's still pending from before March of last year, definitely consider resubmitting. And you'll need your permanent or mailing address for your application. You'll need your family size. And then if you don't opt into the IRS integration tool that is connected to the online application, you'll need to provide some type of income documentation, whether that's a W-2, a pay stub, your bank account statement. You'll just have to have some income information handy. And then you also must know what type of plan you want to enroll in. The lowest monthly payment option has been removed from the IDR application, so you can no longer just kind of put it on the servicer to decide what plan you want. You have to know exactly which one. And then in terms of processing, it can take a few days or up to a few months or even more to process your application. We have seen that applications that opt into the IRS integration tool are being processed more quickly compared to folks who have to manually upload their documentation or their income documentation. If you do apply, you will be placed into a processing forbearance once you submit your application. This is a up to 60-day forbearance where you do not have to make any payments. The servicer is processing your application. If you're not put into this processing forbearance, you can call your servicer and demand to be placed into one. If that 60 days comes and goes and your application has still not been processed, don't worry, you'll just be placed into a different type of forbearance and you still won't have to make payments until your application is processed. A note about Parent Plus loans. If you have unconsolidated direct Parent Plus loans and you want to enroll them in an IDR plan, you will need to act quickly here. So, due to the Big Beautiful Bill changes, Parent Plus loans must be consolidated and dispersed before July 1st, 2026 in order to gain access to IDR plans. So that means that your application has to be completely processed before July 1st, 2026 if you want to have access to IDR plans. If your loans are not consolidated before this date, you'll lose all access to income-driven repayment plans. Our recommendation, if this is a loose recommendation, it's not an official deadline, but is to apply to consolidate by April 1st, giving you around 90 days to have that application processed. But honestly, the sooner the better if you're thinking about doing this. Consolidated Parent Plus loans can be enrolled in the ICR plan. And then this newest update is that after at least one payment has been made while you're enrolled in the ICR plan, a Parent Plus loan holder can then apply for and be enrolled in the income-based repayment plan. So that is definitely a benefit for a lot of folks. And then a final note here is that you can submit a single application to consolidate your loans and enroll your loans in the ICR plan simultaneously for Parent Plus loans. And this goes for any type of consolidation. You can apply to consolidate and enroll your loans in an IDR plan at the same time. If your Parent Plus loans are already consolidated and enrolled in ICR, this does not apply to you. You are already consolidated, you're enrolled in an IDR plan. You don't need to really pay attention to this slide. Okay, so a little bit about federal loan consolidation. We've mentioned it briefly. What is consolidation? It's more about converting older loans into a newer loan or a direct loan. So if you have Fell or Perkins loans, it's about turning that into a direct loan or combining multiple loans into a single loan. You can do that as well. When you consolidate, you're essentially creating a new loan, so you'll have a new payoff date. Consolidations can take 30 to 60 or more days. Again, there are a lot of backlogs right now for processing applications, so just anticipate a longer wait time there. And at this time, we do not recommend anyone consolidate their loans on or after July 1st of 2026. Things to consider when you're consolidating. You can consolidate one single loan into a direct consolidation loan. You can do this with one Parent Plus loan or one Fell or Fell consolidation loan. And you can do this with one Perkins loan. If you're consolidating an existing direct consolidation loan, that's when you have to have at least one other loan you're combining it with. And then you can find the consolidation application at studentaid.gov. A note about consolidating, this is very important. If you consolidate right now, you could erase some or all of your repayment history, including your PSLF progress, by creating that new loan. And this could extend your payoff date, like I mentioned earlier. And it could also reset your IDR credits to 0 and result in a weighted average of your PSLF credits. So just keep that in mind while you are doing this. And then folks must submit an employer certification form before submitting a consolidation application to get the maximum number of PSLF credits that you may have pending still. Okay, that was a lot. So we're gonna go over how to estimate monthly payments on IDR plans.
Thank you, Sabrina Ashley. All right, I just want to let folks know I'm going to walk you through how to identify your monthly payments and what to do if you're struggling, and then we're going to get into public service loan forgiveness. I did see that question come up a lot, so let's jump right in. We're a little bit behind schedule, but we're going to try and get through this as quickly as we can. So, all right, how to identify monthly payments on different plans? We do recommend, and I know multiple folks have already said today, the loan simulator, excuse me. That is on studentaid.gov. You can just log in there. I'm going to show folks an example of what it looks like in just a few moments here. Just keep in mind that when you're going through the loan simulator, it's not 100% accurate. It your monthly payment could be higher, it could be lower. It's just not 100% accurate. So that is a downside of the loan simulator. The calculations for the standard plan, if that is a plan that you're considering, tend to be pretty accurate, especially if you're logged into your account while going through the loan simulator. And it is a good tool if you don't have time to call your servicer and wait on the phone. Now, if you do want to get your servicer on the phone, if you want to talk to someone about your options, you also can do that. The only downside to that is that it can take a long time to get your servicer on the phone. So if you are able to get them and you give them a call, I recommend asking them, what repayment plans am I eligible for and what are the estimated monthly payments? If you are someone who is working towards public service loan forgiveness, be sure to specify that so that they will share with you the plans that do qualify for the program so that you don't miss out on the credits needed to benefit from it. We also do recommend the EdCap tool, as both Sabrina, Ashley, and Natalia and Aisa mentioned earlier today. That is also very helpful in terms of determining your monthly payment. However, the downside there is that it cannot confirm which plans you are eligible for. So this next slide here, we're going to take a look at the loan simulator. So again, go to studentaid.gov. You're going to come across this page. I recommend you select the first column here. I want to find the best student loan repayment strategy. Once you click on that, you will see this page on the left here, which is going to ask you which of the following apply to you. Be sure to take a look at this, select everything that applies to you, and then it's going to ask you to fill in a little bit more information. So if someone indicated that they filed taxes and that they have income, you will see here that it then asks them to answer what is their tax filing status and what their yearly salary is. So again, everything that you select, you will be prompted to respond to. Once you do that, you are going to come across this question. What is your primary repayment goal? I do recommend that folks select to have a low monthly payment so that the option that appears to you is going to be the lowest monthly payment. For most folks, that is the goal, to have the lowest. And so in this case, this person went through the loan simulator. They indicated that they're working towards public service loan forgiveness, so they wanted to see the options available to them and wanted the lowest monthly payment. This person is told that their monthly payment is going to be $339 and the payment period is up to 25 years. Now, that does not mean that that person has to pay for an additional 25 years. It's saying that for you to receive loan forgiveness through ICR, through this plan specifically, you would need to be in repayment for 25 years. So if you were currently on the pay plan and you've been making payments for 10 years and you're now choosing to switch into the ICR plan, which has a timeline of 25 years, you would need to make an additional 15 years worth of payments in order to reach that threshold and become eligible for forgiveness. That is a question that we see often, so I just wanted to clarify that for folks. And then I recommend also scrolling down a bit where there's this blue button here that says view and compare all plans. Once you click on that, when we go to the next page here, you will see on the left-hand side all of the options available to this person. Now, if this person was not pursuing public service loan forgiveness, there are these other options that are equally as good as the options available. So there's extended graduated, the graduated plan, extended repayment plan, and standard. So all of your options that you qualify for should pop up here. And if you scroll down a little bit further, it's then going to have this tab that says view ineligible plans, as we see here on the right-hand side. For this person, they did not qualify for the pay plan because they didn't demonstrate that financial hardship piece that is required. And in this case, when the person went through this, it indicated that they did not qualify for the income-based repayment plan. Now, as Sabrina Ashley said earlier, everyone should be able to qualify for income-based repayment. So if you are going through the loan simulator and it tells you that you don't qualify, it could be that the loan simulator has not been fully updated. They are still working on it. So again, it could be wrong. And if you want to confirm your eligibility for IBR, which you should be, and you want to know what that monthly payment amount looks like, I recommend you call your servicer to get more information on those numbers. All right, and then this is just a quick glimpse of that EdCap tool that we also mentioned. The EdCap tool does provide good estimates. On the left-hand side here, you'll be prompted to enter your total loan balance, the annual interest rate, your AGI, your household size, number of dependents, and then on the right-hand side here, it then does show you what the estimated monthly payments would be. In this case, this person's monthly payment would be $0 on IBR, $0 on pay as you earn. For income contingent repayment, they're quoted at $130. And for the WRAP plan, again, there's no $0 minimum payment. It is now $10. And so this person was quoted at 10. So if you are considering the WRAP plan, you can go through this tool to see what your monthly payment will be. But again, this does not confirm eligibility for all of the plans that appear. All right, so what to do if you are struggling to repay your loans? There are options available. Now, we always first recommend that folks go through those tools, see if you can secure an income-driven repayment plan to lower your monthly payment. However, if you can't afford the minimum monthly payment that you're being quoted, you may want to consider an option such as forbearance or deferment, which are both temporary emergency options. Now, a forbearance allows you to temporarily stop making payments or to temporarily make smaller payments, and there's usually no progress towards loan forgiveness or a loan payoff during a forbearance. Also, just keep in mind that interest does accrue. So you may choose to pay the interest during a forbearance. However, if you are struggling financially, if you don't want to do that, that is absolutely okay. A deferment also allows you to temporarily stop making payments. The interest accrues on some loan types, not all of them, but the eligibility requirement is more specific when it comes to deferment. So if you're undergoing cancer treatment, economic hardship, if you're in a graduate fellowship, or any of these options that are outlined here, you can fill out a specific form to apply for a deferment. And so again, these are the two options, the forbearance or deferment. Just keep that in mind. And as I'm talking about applications as well, I'm seeing a lot of folks in the Q&A talk about you've submitted an application months ago, you're waiting for it to be processed. We mentioned it at the top, but I'll say it again. There is a huge processing backlog at the Department of Education. There are more than 700,000 applications that are outstanding, more than 626,000 income-driven repayment applications that have not been processed, as well as applications for the PSLF buyback program that are more than 83,000. So it is taking a really long time. And so as you're submitting these applications, keep that in mind, that there's just so much happening. And so I completely understand the frustration. Just know that that is a possibility here as you're applying for different programs and things. Now, what happens if I don't make payments? The first day past due, your loans are considered delinquent. Now, if we continue with non-payments past 90 days, the delinquency will be reported to the National Credit Bureau. So at that point, folks could see your credit score drop a few hundred points. That is a result of the student loan delinquency. The loan will remain delinquent until either the missed payments are made up, you request a deferment or a forbearance to be retroactively applied and granted to cover the delinquent period, or you can enroll in an income-driven repayment plan to get your loans back on track and into good standing. However, if you continue to not make payments past 270 days, which is an estimated 9 months, the student loan is officially considered to be in default. And the consequences of default include tax refunds being withheld, wage garnishment, ineligibility for federal credit, such as federally backed mortgages. However, there is good news in which there are ways to get out of default. So I'm just going to cover that in a moment here. It's also important to note that federal Perkins loans can be placed into default after just one day of missed payments. So be very careful if you have Perkins loans. And after 360 days, around that time, the loans are moved from your current servicer to a default servicer. So someone like the default resolution group could then hold your loans, and that would be the new um, holder that you would then start to communicate when it comes to your defaulted student loans. So if you want to know if you're in default, one of the first places we recommend looking is at your studentaid.gov account on your dashboard specifically. If you are in default, you'll see this red banner at the top. It'll say you have X number of loans in default. If you were in default and you got out of default and you log in, um, this banner could potentially still be there. Don't be discouraged by that. But if you are behind on payments, if you're worried and you just want to know if you are in default, this is a good place to start. If not, I do recommend calling the default resolution group. And again, we covered this at the top. I'll say it again quickly. Right now, there is a temporary pause on garnishments and tax refund seizures and collections. So no one should be experiencing that right now. If you are, please email our team so that we can see what is going on and figure out how to stop that. Even if you've received a notice saying that the collections would begin on your defaulted loans, this has all been paused for now. We don't know how long this will last, but it is a really great time for you to learn about your options to get out of default and bring the loans back into good standing. All right, so if you are in default and you're looking to get out of it, there are a few ways. I'll start here by explaining loan rehabilitation. This is where you make 9 on-time monthly payments over the course of 10 months. You are going to work with your servicer to determine an affordable monthly payment amount. It could be as little as $5 depending on your income and your financial situation. Once this process is done, if you're in collections, the collections will stop. And loan rehabilitation is only a one-time opportunity as of right now. Now, another option to get out of default is loan consolidation. As Sabrina Ashley mentioned, this is the process of converting or combining your loans into a direct consolidation loan, which is the creation of a new loan. To qualify for this, you must either agree to repay under an income-driven repayment plan or make 3 full on-time payments before you consolidate the loan. You can consolidate a single loan if you have just one. You can consolidate it as long as you've not consolidated it into a direct consolidation loan already. Because a direct consolidation loan, that is the furthest it can go. It can't be consolidated any further unless you're combining it with something else. So, a couple tips here. If the Department of Education, the default resolution group, or the Treasury Department contacts you, which is usually via mail or email, do not ignore their communications, because if you act quickly, you may be able to prevent those collections from starting against you. To receive assistance or to learn more about your options, we recommend calling the default resolution group. If you can't locate your loans, if you don't know if you're in default, if you want to learn more, that is a good place to start. And also explore ways to get your loans out of default as soon as possible. In just a bit, Natalia is going to cover some of the options that are available, other forms of discharge, and that is something that you can explore. All right, with that, I'm going to kick it over to Natalia to cover PSLF.
Thank you, Sabrina. And thank you, everyone, for hanging in there. We know that this is a lot to cover and just appreciate you hanging in there. So let's get right into PSLF. All right, so the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program started October 1st, 2007. This is important because any work done prior to 2007, well, that's awesome and we thank you for it. Your time starts, or those credits, as Sabrina Ashley talked about, that's when you could have started earning credits. 120 on-time payments, which is 10 years, that is required for the program, and then an applicate plus time for the application approval. Unfortunately, you have to stay in repayment, like active repayment, until your application is approved. You are entitled to a refund for all of the overpayments. Just, to keep in mind, many people will see that refund show up in their bank account. To reiterate what Sabrina Calazans was saying, we hear you and are fighting hard. We have a petition right now demanding that the Department of Education process all payments. They are holding hostage PSLF forgiveness payments, PSLF, enrolling into the program, enrolling into IDR. So we understand that frustration. And a reminder that if you applied for any program prior to March of 2025, to reapply. If it's just been in limbo for a very long time, we suggest reapplying to public service loan forgiveness or for an income-driven repayment program. Sorry for the side note, back to PSLF. For this program specifically, payments are cumulative, not consecutive, so you can go in and out of the program. And the way to maximize your benefit is by being enrolled in an income-driven repayment plus public service loan forgiveness, and then you'll get the most amount forgiven after that 10-year period of time. So continuing on, for public service loan forgiveness, you must have a direct loan. Those older FFEL loans do not qualify, but you can consolidate them. You want to make sure you have an eligible employer, and we'll go over that. You want to make sure you're in a qualifying repayment plan. We'll go over that too. And then just like anything with your student loans right now, make sure to do your own documentation and use the PSLF form to make sure you can keep up to date with the amount of credits. Once you reach 120 credits, go through the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Help Tool again and click the button that says, I've completed 120 credits. All right, so what qualifies for public service loan forgiveness? All of the direct loans, direct subsidized, unsubsidized, even direct Parent Plus loans. The parent themselves has to be working in an eligible job or for an eligible employer, and the direct consolidation. In terms of repayment plan, the 10-year standard does count. However, if you pay it off in 10 years, you're not going to see a PSLF benefit. So this is there because some people go in and out of repayment plans, and that time spent on standard will count. But the ICR plan counts, the pay-as-you-earn plan counts, and the income-based repayment plan counts. In addition, those first few months on the SAVE plan should count, but after the lawsuit happened, it gets really sticky. So there's definitely some discrepancies with those credit counts. For employers, all level of government, state, local, federal government, 501c3 nonprofits, and other critical public service, like if you're a nurse that works for a nonprofit hospital, teachers, absolutely, police officers, all of these people count. So what does not qualify? As I mentioned, those older FFELP loans, the Perkins loans. Now, both the FFELP loan and Perkins loans can be consolidated into a direct consolidation loan, and then it would count. Private loans, however, never count, and time and default does not count. You can get your loan out of default and into good standing to become eligible for PSLF. In terms of repayment plans, those fixed alternative plans that Sabrina Ashley was discussing, those do not count. The 30-year or standard plans longer than the 10-year plan does not count. And most forbearances, including in-school deferment, does not count. For your employers, if you are working as a contractor for any government job, state, local job, if your employer is not the government themselves, but you're a contractor or 1099 job, that does not count. 501c4 political nonprofits do not count, and labor unions. And we often get this question, if you are a member of a labor union, that does not disqualify you. It's working at the labor union itself. So there's a PSLF buyback program. This is another place where we're seeing a huge backlog. I'm not sure if this is recently updated, but around 70,000 buyback applications have still not been processed. This is incredibly frustrating because you should be receiving your credits and being able to exit not just this program, but your student loan completely. So what is the buyback program? You can buy back certain months of your payment history to make them qualifying payments. Time spent in the SAVE program works towards buyback. So after, I believe it was July, I think it's a couple years ago now, it halted the SAVE program, but you can buy back that time if you have been in a qualifying job. You can specifically buy back months that don't count as qualifying payments because you are ineligible due to deferment or forbearance. However, time spent in school cannot be bought back. That will never be able to convert to a proper PSLF credit. So I want everyone to think about this program as you're buying the past, not the future. So the buyback's only available when you have estimated, this is why we say keep your own records and your own credit count, 120 months of qualifying employment. And then you look back and you realize, oh, a few months were in forbearance or deferment, or I was in the SAVE plan. But if your count is that you've had a student loan, not an in-school deferment for 10 years or 120 months, you've made a lot of payments, and then you've been on for example, on the SAVE program, you may be eligible to do buyback. You must submit a buyback request. and make at least one extra payment of at least as much as what you would have owed under the income-driven repayment plan during the months you're trying to buy back. So if you're paying $160 on an income-driven repayment program, and then you have a few months of forbearance, you need to make that $160 payment plus do your buyback request. This sounds great in theory. It just is so awful when you have to then be part of this huge backlog. So we urge you to take action, to call your lawmakers so we can get the ball rolling and we can see these applications be processed in a timely manner. So unfortunately, there are set to be changes. Aissa mentioned this at the top of the call to the public service loan forgiveness. The Department of Education, based on an executive order from the Trump administration, finalized a rule to change employers' public service loan forgiveness eligibility starting July of this year. Now, this is subject to change because of that lawsuit that Protect Borrowers, AFT, many other organizations are a part of. So this could delay the implementations, like fingers crossed on that. But employers are at risk of being affected by these changes, meaning the PSLF eligibility for certain employers could be taken away if they work, and these are the department's words, not ours, gender affirming care providers like hospitals, nonprofits supporting immigrants, universities with DEI policies, state and local governments and sanctuary cities and states, all could lose the employer would lose the ability to give employees PSLF for public service loan forgiveness. The impact, if you're an administrative assistant at public service or at one of these hospitals that is deemed ineligible, you would lose credits. The employer themselves would lose it. It wouldn't be based on the job you're doing. Following this determination that the employer is deemed ineligible, going forward, it would no longer count. Your past credits would remain intact. There are currently 3 ongoing lawsuits to challenge this rule. So again, we hope that this delays or that they win their case and this is never implemented. We recommend, again, using the PSLF help tool now, sometime again, maybe in May or June, to make sure you know your most up-to-date PSLF credit count ahead of this implementation. All right, we're almost there, folks. So let's just quickly go over some additional forms of loan forgiveness, cancellation, and discharge. This is really important if any of these apply to you to try to wipe out as much debt as possible. So one of the bigger ones is total and permanent disability. This provides full forgiveness on your federal student loan if you are totally and permanently disabled. You must provide documentation from Veterans Affairs, the Social Security Administration, or a medical professional. Most people seek a medical professional. There's no longer a 3-year monitoring period for total and permanent disability. And borrowers qualify if they have a mental or health condition that is expected or has lasted 5 years and is preventing you from getting substantially gainful employment. You cannot be working at all in order to get total and permanent disability, but it is an option for borrowers out there. There's also borrower defense to repayment. If you've attended a school that has acted in a fraudulent manner, often these for-profit colleges, we've seen people be able to get their loans discharged because of that. There's teacher loan forgiveness, which we're not going to cover today, but that is another option, less generous than public service loan forgiveness, but still out there. I guess it's kind of silver lining, which feels, awful to say, but your student loans do die with you. Federal student loans unlike private student loans, do not get passed on to any of your loved ones. If your school has closed, you may be entitled to a refund or to have your student loans dismissed. An unpaid refund, you are entitled to a refund, like I mentioned, with public service loan forgiveness. If there's also false certification, meaning that if somebody applied for a loan and that wasn't you, you can get that canceled. And then there are Perkins loans forgiveness programs. We know that's a mouthful, but we strongly urge you to check out the other forms of forgiveness and discharge while you're looking at income-driven repayment programs and public service loan forgiveness. So what can you do right now? We talked about this at the top of the hour. Know who your servicer is and have access to your account on their website and at studentaid.gov. Know what repayment plan you are enrolled in, save any communication and document what you receive from your loan servicer. Print, download, screenshot, and save any information on how many credits you have for public service loan forgiveness or income-driven repayment. Another reminder, Parent Plus loan borrowers who would like to enroll, if you have unconsolidated loans in an income-driven repayment plan, you will need to do so to consolidate your Parent Plus loans before July 1st. We are saying an unofficial deadline of April 1st to give you more than 3 months to deal with these obscene processing delays. If you have issues or complaints, you can always contact your representative offices. I believe our team is going to share the casework tool to help you do that. Contact your state attorney general's office, local and state loan ombudsman if you're lucky enough to have one in your state. We work closely in California and Connecticut and Washington. There's some great ombuds people out there that can help you with your student loans. Call your loan servicer, use the loan servicer website. That can be a place that people start. It's not always a terrible outcome. And then there is a help center at the Department of Education at studentaid.gov/help-center/contact. Aisa mentioned this at the top of the hour, but beware of debt scams with so much confusion, so many different programs, so many changes. Just beware of anyone that's asking you or to pay them money for this free information. Everything we're talking about today and everything at studentaid.gov is completely free of charge. You never need to pay for student loan help. So just be careful of these scams out there. In addition, if you refinance your student loan with a private lender, you will lose access to all of the federal loan benefits that we've talked about today. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Sabrina to close us out.
Perfect. Thank you, Natalia. And thank you all for joining us today. As we said, we're going to be sending around a recording, an email with all of the lists of resources that may be helpful for you. Gladly, we were able to answer all of the questions in the Q&A. We will be back next month with more workshops, so keep an eye out for that. Again, we appreciate you sticking with us for this long workshop. Again, stick around. We are going to be sharing more updates via email. And again, we'll see you next month in our next workshop. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night. Take care.